Welcome back, GCS 7th graders. I am Ms. Misha Moore from Jackson Middle School, and I am ready to learn, and I hope you are too. So the materials that you'll need today, of course, will be paper or your ELA notebook, otherwise known as the writer's notebook, a pen or a pencil. Today's objective is I can explain the impact of a word's connotative meaning on the poem Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. So we read this poem in a previous lesson if you were able to watch the video before this one. So you should have some form of an understanding of the poem, but today we're going to practice looking at the connotative meaning of things using this particular excerpt. All right, so now I want you to think through the power of words. I'm a firm believer that words mean things and that everything that an author puts in a text has some type of meaning or underlining point that the author is trying to convey. So authors use words as a tool to paint the picture of what they want the readers to see. So when you think about imagery and things like that, that's why authors use those types of words. Authors also use words to make the readers feel certain emotions, so like your mood. So as you're reading, the author wants you to feel a certain type of way. Authors also choose their words very carefully. They use different shades of a word to convey how they feel about a particular subject, so their tone. So when you think through the power of words and when you're thinking through what you're reading, please think through that the words have meaning and the author is trying to convey a particular point. So today our primary focus will be denotation and connotation. So I just want to remind you of what these two things mean. You may be familiar with these two terms based on your experiences as 7th graders. However, for denotation, it's the literal dictionary definition of a word. For our connotation typically just means the emotion associated with the word. So when you see a word, even though you know the denotative meaning, you may be able to imply an emotion from it or imply a different meaning based on how the author uses the word. Okay, so now we're gonna get a chance to do a little bit of practice. Of course, most of us know the denotative meaning or the denotation of rats, which simply is a long-tailed rodent. It is similar to but larger than a mouse. So that is our denotative meaning of rat. However, when you think about the connotative meaning, you may have a rat as a pet. However, most people think that they're dirty and also filthy and can't be trusted. He was a total rat and turned against his friends to avoid getting in trouble. So again, this is like the connotative meaning of the word rat, someone that cannot be trusted, someone that's dirty or filthy. So when you look at these particular examples here, you have skinny, thin, slim, lanky, and scrawny. When we think about the dictionary, the denotative meaning, these words mean the exact same thing. However, when we think about the connotation of these particular words, some may be more positive than others. So when we think of the word skinny, it kind of lies right here in the middle. However, when we look at the word thin, it kind of moves slightly towards the more positive ends of things. And then slim, here, we know that when you describe someone as being slim or slimmer, that may have a more of a positive connotation rather than the word lanky that kind of lends itself to the negative ends of things. And then lastly, when you think of scrawny, I would never want to be described as being scrawny. So again, as we think through all these different words that mean the same thing, you need to think through the connotative meaning of things and how they all have different connotations that extend from both the negative ends of things to the positive ends of things. All of these words have the same literal meaning, but their use conveys a variety of emotions to the reader. We've already read Mother to Son. However, you should have access to this text from the previous lesson. But before we read, I want you to think of a time when things were tough and you wanted to give up and stop. How did you handle this particular situation? So now that you've had some time to think through the following prompt, how did you handle the situation? Did you keep going or did you stop? So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to do a read aloud of the text Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. And as we are reading, I want you to think through who is the speaker, how does the speaker describe their life, and what is the poem mostly about? Well, son, I tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up. And places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time, eyes have been climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on the steps because you finds it kind of harder. Don't you fall now, for eyes are still going, honey. Eyes are still climbing, and life for me ain't been no crystal stair. So again, as we approach the text, I told you to think of the following questions like, who is the speaker? So when we think about who is the speaker, we know that the speaker is the mother. So we know that the speaker is the mother. How does the speaker describe their life? Again, the mother describes their life as being somewhat hard and challenging. All right, so when I think about what is this poem mostly about, based on my initial reading, I know that this poem is mostly about the advice a mother is giving to their son about life. So for the next part of today's lesson, we are going to be using this organizer to kind of support us in our thinking of understanding how does the connotative meaning slightly differ from the denotative meaning of certain words and phrases used in the text by Hughes. It is important for us to understand why an author may have chosen a particular word because, again, when you think about the connotative meaning of a particular word, you need to think about the emotions that you experience as the reader based on the words that the author has chosen. So two words that we were able to identify in this particular example or modeling is crystal and bear. And as we're going back into the poem, I want you to think through what is the impact of the words crystal and bear. So the two words crystal here, we know that Hughes is describing the stairwell or the staircase as being crystal here. And then when you think about the word bear, he also describes the stairwell or the staircase as being bare. So the denotative meaning of crystal is glass resembling ice. And here, based on this particular excerpt in the context, the connotative meaning here would be fancy or elegant. When I read the word crystal, I think of something that's fancy, elegant, really nice. One thing that we should note in Mother to Son is that Hughes is saying that life for me ain't been no crystal stair. So for the mother, things have not been fancy, things have not been elegant. For the most part, things have been somewhat of a struggle. So it's important for us as readers to understand that, yes, the word crystal has a positive connotation. However, the mother that's described in this particular poem by Hughes, she hasn't had a crystal clear life. She hasn't had a fancy life. So let's move on to the word bear. So when you think about the word bear, it has a negative connotation, and the denotative meaning just means without covering. The connotative meaning here means it's lacking, unfinished, or empty. So when I think about the word bear and like the impact that it has on this text, it just kind of aligns to life being empty or unfinished for the mother. So when I think about the question, what is the impact of the word crystal and bear? And what does it help me understand about the speaker's life? The thing that I can say is that her life has been hard. She has not had the finer things in life. She's had to fight to keep going. So again, we look at crystal and bear, the denotative and the connotative meanings here, and this is what we can understand about the speaker's life. And again, one thing that I want to reiterate is that through his intentional use of the words crystal and bear, to some degree, Hughes is trying to emphasize the hardships the speaker has faced in life. All right, so now we're going to have some time to practice using some words that I've already pre-identified for you. So the words that we're going to be focused on for this particular example or that you're going to practice with is the words dark and light. And as you're going back over and rereading the poem, I want you to think to yourself, what is the impact of the words dark and light? So what I want you to do right now, I want you to pause your screen and I want you to practice looking through and identifying the denotative and the connotative meaning of dark and light using this excerpt from Mother to Son. All right, so now that you've had the opportunity to practice on your own, identifying both the connotative and denotative meaning and kind of thinking through how they differ in this particular poem, Ms. Moore wants to share her thinking with you. Hopefully your thinking was in alignment with mine. If not, that is okay. You'll have more time throughout the year to practice connotative and denotative meanings. All right, so here we know that dark, when the author uses the word dark, we know that it has a negative connotation. So I'm going to circle the word dark, and then I'm also going to circle the word light. So in the text, dark has a negative connotation, and the denotative meaning is just lacking light. However, when I think about the connotative meaning and the feeling that I get when it says, and sometimes going in the dark. So when I think about the word dark, I know that it has a negative connotation. I don't like to be alone in the dark. I know that darkness is indicative of something that is not a positive thing, and it also can be indicative of difficulties, hardships, and also be very cold. It's very dark in here. So when I read the word dark, the connotation that I'm able to see here is that darkness is just symbolic of the difficulties, the hardships, and the coldness that the mother has experienced throughout her life. When I look at the word light, where there ain't been no light. Again, here we know that light has a positive connotation, and the denotative meaning here is just making things visible. However, the connotative meaning is just easy, bright, and optimistic. And if you would note in this particular line of the poem, where there ain't been no light, I know that the mother has not experienced this optimism, and I know that the mother has not experienced life being easy for her. So when I think of the question, what does it help me understand about the speaker's life? Again, we need to notate that her life has not been easy and full of optimism. So what is the impact of the words dark and light? Essentially what Hughes does here through his use of language and his use of words, they contrast the easy life some people have with the hard life of the speaker. So hopefully you were able to pull out some additional examples as you read through the poem of different connotative and denotative meanings and kind of the impact that the word choice had on the meaning of the poem. So now we'll get a little bit more practice in our reader's workshop. Each day it is expected that you read for 15 to 30 minutes a day. Your teacher may have individual expectations at your respective school. However, when you do your independent reading today, I want you to find 2 to 3 powerful words that stick out to you in your book. Determine if they are positive or negative words, if they have a positive or negative connotation. Determine their denotative meaning, and then also determine their connotative meaning. So this is a graphic organizer that we use for today's class. So as you're reading and engaging with your own independent text, I want you to practice what we did today with A Mother to Son on your own with your independent reading book. So now let's review what we've learned today. Today we determined the difference between connotative and denotative meanings of words. We also determined the connotative meanings of words in the poem Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. And we also analyzed their impact on the text. As always, I enjoyed reading and learning and also growing with you. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. I will see you the next time. Thank you.